Climate change is a Chinese conspiracy. 5G radio waves cause cancer. Sounds ridiculous, right? But what if it's true? These two simple but powerful words have the potential to turn casual curiosity into strong and deep interest. But questioning what you hear has long been regarded as a responsible way to challenge the validity of facts. So what's different this time? The answer, we believe, is in the manipulative and strategic casting of doubt at large scales. More specifically, truth is represented as something that is relative to the beliefs and morals of a person's perspective. In other words, truth is not only something to be factually known, but also felt. It is this kind of doubt which, with the help of the internet, fuels the spread of the topic of this video: fake news. But first, what is fake news, and where did it come from? According to some scholars, fake news is the deliberate attempt to distort information so that it takes on the appearance of legitimate news. Some argue that it ranges between news that is totally fake to the sensationalist or the profiteering kind. Others comment on the fuzziness of fake news, referring to how there seems to be no consensus on what it means. In tracing the history of fake news, examples of all of these definitions come up: fabrication, profiteering, and even the fuzzy gray area kind. Take, for example, this review of the 2002 Ford Explorer. The author excitedly reports that the car is designed to offer performance and convenience in a robust yet comfortable package. The review concludes with a call to test drive the Explorer today. According to Russell Frank, there can only be one reason to design an ad to resemble news: to make it more believable. He calls these advertorials. They are one way to hitchhike the credibility of news. Another way is through the use of photography, the blending of two or more images to create a fake photograph. Harmless hoaxes such as the helicopter shark served to shock and entertain early internet users. But serious fabrications, even before the arrival of the internet, may seem familiar to us today. Consider Jimmy's World, the 1980 Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington Post story about an 8-year-old heroin addict. After being exposed, the prize had to be returned. Or what about the New York Times journalist who fabricated 36 news articles until he resigned in 2003? Russell Frank comments, "If a reporter was inventing news at the most respected paper in the land, it seemed reasonable to assume that the problem was widespread." Misinformation then, as Sylvia Wasford puts it, is as old as rhetoric, and large-scale propaganda is as old as modern mass persuasion. Indeed, as far back as 1928, Edward Bernays, known as the father of public relations, believed that the masses were not competent enough to make wise political decisions, and should therefore be manipulated. So if fake news really is that old, what's different today? We believe that the scale of the internet has enabled the hitchhiking of the credibility of the news to get out of hand. It became very easy to create alternative and independent news sources that looked legitimate. Susana Salgado says, "Never before have citizens had access to so much information through such a variety of sources and channels. But too much information without any filters can lead to a situation in which people do not have any basis for knowing what is relevant and what is irrelevant." As users took notice of stories not covered by mainstream sources, it appeared as though traditional news media were suppressing the truth. Feeling alienated, disgruntled consumers took comfort in alternative sources which often aligned with their biases. This wasn't possible in the early internet, according to Russell Frank. Fake news, he says, was confined to email and satirical websites, which were easily distinct from television and newspapers. And so, the erosion of this distinction came with variety, low cost, and scale.
I think it hasn't really hit me to the point of anything where it's genuinely affected it. But I think it has given me a wider perspective of not relying on Twitter news or leftist biased news, even if I am towards that of the the spectrum. I'm not going to be reading only that news, because if you seek information that only you want, then of course it's going to fit your narrative, right? Like I said before, I'm not going to watch Vox and be that's not going to help me understand both perspectives and encourage growth. So learning how to be more central in my media bias has definitely helped.
So are the masses unable to make wise political decisions? And if so, how does fake news manipulate people into adopting it as fact? Part of the appeal to fake news is its confirmation of bias and its absorbable nature. According to Daniel David, people process information by first receiving and understanding it, and then determining its value of truth. He goes on to say that, when you understand the new information, you automatically think it is true. Very often there is no second stage, and then you come to believe that everything you understand is true. Communication that is explicit and appears to be factual is easy to understand. This is referred to as comprehensibility, and it influences the acceptance of fake news. A study indicated that those who respond well to fake news have two major belief systems that affect comprehensibility. First, they respond positively to power and authority. Second, they have a preference for societal hierarchy and perceive high-status individuals as dominant over the lower-status ones. People who internalize their so-called lower status find comfort in the authority of high-status individuals. For example, are they wealthy? Are they the president? A doctor? An influencer? It eliminates their need for fact-checking and places trust and at times adoration for such authority figures. Coupled with what's called the echo chamber effect, whereby algorithms group users based on their preferences and morals, these factors eventually lead to polarization. And so, the appeal to authority is a powerful tool for creators of fake news to persuade an audience to adopt it as fact. However, such power can be further maximized through the direct targeting of individuals susceptible to fake news. One major way is through the collection of data of internet users. This is part of what is known as the big data revolution. After all, technologically derived truths can't possibly be twisted to fit a narrative, right? Actually, there is growing concern about the implications for individual privacy, human autonomy, and social justice.
I think fake news is just misinformation. I don't think it's really intentional. I think most of the time fake news is accidental, especially when it's done by, big platforms like New York Times and Washington Post and your local news station. I think sometimes it's just a matter of information comes in too fast and they report it too quick because it's all about the views and all about the money. And of course they want to be the first ones, right? There are dangerous amounts of fake news being consumed.
Big data grants the ability to potentially know more about individual users than what they may know about themselves, such as information about behaviors, beliefs, sexual orientation, and racial identity. Can such data be used to craft sophisticated fake news that fully appeals to the biases of target users? The answer is unclear. Pessimistically, big data allows fake news to perpetuate the invasion of privacy and the normalization of discrimination by individuals and institutions. Optimistically, ethical uses of big data may lead to progressive societal transformations.
We have a few reasons. We have US election coming up, which of course means you got to get stories out there, got to get people worked up, got to basically create culture war on the internet to get both sides ready to go to maximize the output to get the result, the desired result, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Other than that, probably they're trying to sell you something.
At this point, it is fair to ask, does fake news work? And is there anything we can do about it? We've heard of rigged presidential elections and of conspiracies surrounding pizzerias that have risked the lives of innocent people. Some doubt the extent to which fake news is influential. Manuel Arias Maldonado points out that only 1% of Twitter users account for 80% of fake news. Mark Zuckerberg shares this view since the revenue from fake news advertising on Facebook accounts for only 0.1% of its daily revenue. Despite this, Zuckerberg has decided to deploy a new anti-clickbait algorithm and has announced that the company will work with fact-checking organizations to flag fake news stories identified by users. Google has also announced a policy update that restricts adverts from being placed on fake news sites, thus diminishing the economic incentive that drives at least some of this content. Furthermore, the number of fact-checking websites has increased from 44 in 2014 to 119 today. But as Robert Dale notes, these sites rely on human labor. The process is slow and expensive. By the time a human has carried out fact-checking, the erroneous story may have been shared and retweeted many times and the damage done. But regardless of the influence of fake news, most scholars appear to agree on some of the ways to combat it. First, raise awareness about the ambiguities and nuances of communication styles. Second, increase digital literacy, especially in those who struggle to identify simple red flags in fake news. And finally, subscribe to a quality newspaper.